Donald Trump Republican? Joe Biden Democratic? The 2020 United States presidential election was the 59th quadrennial presidential election, held on Tuesday, November 3, 2020. The Democratic ticket of former Vice President Joe Biden and U.S. Senator Kamala Harris defeated the Republican ticket of incumbent President Donald Trump and Vice President Mike Pence. This election was the first since 1992, and 11th time overall, in which an incumbent president failed to win re-election to a second term. 4. The election saw the highest voter turnout since 1900. 5. With Biden and Trump each receiving more than 70 million votes, surpassing Barack Obama's record of 69.5 million votes from 2008. With more than 78 million votes and counting, Biden received the most votes ever cast for a candidate in a U.S. presidential election. 6. The meeting of the presidential electors of the Electoral College to formally vote on a joint ticket for president and vice president will take place on December 14, 2020. 7. Trump secured the Republican nomination without any serious opposition, while Biden secured the Democratic Party nomination over his closest rival, Senator Bernie Sanders, in a competitive primary that featured the largest field of presidential candidates for any political party in the modern era of American politics. Biden's running mate, Senator Harris from California, is the first African American, first Asian American, and third female vice presidential nominee on a major party ticket. Central issues of the election included the public health and economic impacts of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, civil unrest in reaction to the police killing of George Floyd and others, the U.S. Supreme Court following the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg and confirmation of Amy Coney Barrett, and expansion versus reduction of the Affordable Care Act, which guarantees health insurance coverage to people with pre-existing conditions. 8. The election saw a record number of ballots cast early and by mail due to the ongoing pandemic. 9. As a result of the large number of mail-in ballots, some swing states saw delays in vote counting and reporting. This led to major news outlets delaying their projection of Biden and Harris as the winners until November 7, 4 days after the election. 10. Major media networks project a state for a candidate once there is high mathematical confidence that the outstanding vote would be unlikely to prevent the projected winner from ultimately winning that state. 11. Vote counting continues in several states. 12. During the campaign, on election night, 13, and after the Democrats were declared winners, 14, Trump and some Republicans made unsubstantiated claims in an attempt to delegitimize the election. 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, officials in all 50 states have stated that there is no evidence of systematic fraud or irregularities in their state. 20, federal agencies overseeing election security say it was the most secure in American history. 21, 22, 23. Biden and Harris are scheduled to be inaugurated on January 20, 2021. As of November 16, Trump has not conceded and has filed multiple legal challenges disputing the results of the election in multiple states, most of which have been dropped or dismissed by various courts. 24-25. Article 2 of the United States Constitution states that for a person to serve as president, the individual must be a natural-born citizen of the United States, at least 35 years old, and have been a United States resident for at least 14 years. Candidates for the presidency typically seek the nomination of one of the various political parties of the United States. Each party develops a method, such as a primary election, to choose the candidate the party deems best suited to run for the position. The primary elections are usually indirect elections where voters cast ballots for a slate of party delegates pledged to a particular candidate. The party's delegates then officially nominate a candidate to run on the party's behalf. The presidential nominee typically chooses a vice presidential running mate to form that party's ticket, which is then ratified by the delegates at the party's convention, with the exception of the Libertarian Party, which nominates its vice presidential candidate by delegate vote regardless of the presidential nominee's preference. The general election in November is also an indirect election, in which voters cast ballots for a slate of members of the Electoral College. These electors then directly elect the president and vice president. 26. If no candidate receives the minimum 270 electoral votes needed to win the election, the United States House of Representatives will select the president from the 3 candidates who received the most electoral votes, and the United States Senate will select the vice president from the candidates who received the 2 highest totals. The election will occur simultaneously alongside elections for the House of Representatives, Senate, and various state and local level elections. The Maine legislature passed a bill in August 2019 adopting ranked choice voting, RCV, both for presidential primaries and for the general election. 2728, Governor Janet Mills allowed the bill to become law without her signature, which delayed it from taking effect until after the 2020 Democratic primary in March, but made Maine the first state to use RCV for a presidential general election. The Maine Republican Party filed signatures for a veto referendum and preclude the use of RCV for the 2020 election, but Secretary of State Matthew Dunlap found there were insufficient valid signatures to qualify for the ballot. A challenge in Maine Superior Court was successful for the Maine Republican Party, but the Maine Supreme Judicial Court 2930 stayed the ruling pending appeal on September 8, 2020. 31. Nevertheless, ballots began being printed later that day without the veto referendum and including RCV for the presidential election, 3233, and the court ruled in favor of the Secretary of State on September 22, allowing RCV to be used. 34. An emergency appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court was denied on October 6. 35. Implementation of RCV could potentially delay the projection of the winners of Maine's electoral votes for days after Election Day 36, and may complicate interpretation of the national popular vote. 37. The law continues the use of the congressional district method for the allocation of Maine's electors. Nebraska is the only other state that apportions its electoral votes this way. 38. On December 14, 2020, pledged electors for each candidate, known collectively as the United States Electoral College, will gather in their state's capital to cast their official ballot. The ballots are sent to Congress to be opened and officially counted pursuant to the processes laid out by the Electoral Count Act of 1887. The newly elected Congress will meet in joint session to open, count, and certify the ballots on January 6, 2021, with the sitting Vice President, in his role as President of the Senate, presiding over the session. A bipartisan report indicated in 2019 that changes in voter demographics since the 2016 election could impact the results of the 2020 election. African Americans, Hispanics, Asians, and other ethnic minorities, as well as whites with a college degree, are expected to all increase their percentage of national eligible voters by 2020, while whites without a college degree will decrease. The Hispanic likely voter population has increased by approximately 600,000 since the 2016 election. 39. Generation Z, those born after 1996, will more than double to 10% of the eligible voters. 40. It was possible Trump could win the Electoral College while still losing the popular vote. However, updated NBC News reporting from September 2020 predicted this was unlikely with 2020 demographics. 41-42. Youth turnout in the 2016 presidential election was extremely low, 43-44, and during the Democratic primaries young voters broke overwhelmingly for Bernie Sanders. 45-46, however, polls suggest that youth turnout for the 2020 election is comparatively very high. 47-48-49.